All right, how's everyone doing? I am Rich Celenza. Thanks for checking out the Rich Celenza Show. So, what I think I'm going to call this podcast is Why Do I Do My Podcast? Lately, I've been getting a lot of people either emailing me, texting me, or people I meet personally, or just people on YouTube or all over the place, I should say, just responding a lot more to my podcast. And, first off, I want to tell people this wasn't actually my idea by any means. My mother's been begging me to do radio my entire life, probably because of my face. I don't know. I always gravitated more towards film or television or even writing screenplays, things in that nature, amongst other things. But she kept pushing me for years and years. So about, I want to say 11, 12, even 13 years ago, I talked about doing my own radio station. I was actually valet parking at that point in time. After my father sold his company, and I was around a bunch of young guys, like 40 different guys, and a couple girls too that I'm still friends with, and they were characters. And I kept saying, man, these guys, not only them, but a lot of my close family members and friends, I said, God, they'd be great interviews, great stories. So it was an interview, one of my buddies who went to engineer school said, let's do it. We started doing it. We had a blast with it, but then I ended up moving to California, and then it was just kind of too hard to do. This is before the whole Zoom thing, and it was really more radio driven. I didn't even hear anything about podcasts. So you kind of fast forward, and I'll tell you the truth, I was kind of lost on what to do when I got back from Florida a little bit, and I already wrote a couple books. I'd done my films, and I really didn't know what to do necessarily. I knew the endeavor it would take, how hard to create my own YouTube channel, even with the phone being around. And it was just always in the back of my head, hey, I want to do a certain type of podcast. I didn't know what, honestly, or how I wanted to go about it. Because I kept thinking the production value, I wanted to be all interview driven, very similar to like what you'd see on like Joe Rogan or somebody like that. And I actually wasn't at that point in time even following Joe Rogan. And I just had my own idea on how I wanted to do it. But then again, setting up a studio and dedicating all that time. And in the meantime, I was traveling so much. So it just wasn't working for me. So I just said I want to voice my opinion. I just wanted to have a voice again where it wasn't just photos. It wasn't just movies. It wasn't just books. But I've come to love my podcast more than anything, truthfully, more than my YouTube channel, more than really, I love creating programs and helping men as well, or help with consulting and counseling on image and self-confidence and all that stuff. But I really do love having the opportunity to talk about certain things that I've learned and maybe help others, or also maybe them not learn from me and disagree with me and kind of question their beliefs, and maybe they have better answers for themselves. So it kind of works both ways. I think a lot of people think when they're telling you things that that's the only way how to learn them, but I think a lot of us learn kind of arguing or fighting their way through those type of things. So I just really want to do a podcast on this, let people know, first of all, also that I really appreciate if you do listen to my podcast. If you could, hit me up, comments, disagree, agree, all that stuff. I love it tremendously. I can't explain to you. And what's interesting too is when I did interviews, I finally got to the point during the pandemic where I could do my interviews. I did them through Zoom. They kind of do a test. I think I did 60 of them. And at that point in time, after that, I just realized that formula or that style interviewing just didn't feel good to me. I kind of like just going on my own rants for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. I also enjoy my co-host, Robert Beninati, doing some podcasts with him in his office once in a while as well. And a lot of people now kind of hit me up and say, you're kind of like a Bill Burr. He does this on YouTube. And honestly, I love Bill Burr. Unbelievably talented. I didn't know he was doing those on YouTube. I saw audio clips of him doing things. I didn't know it was his podcast. I honestly didn't, and for anybody to kind of compare me to him, I know comedic-wise, I'm nowhere near on the level of his. He's unbelievable. He's one of the top comedians I think ever to come out of America, and but I can see the similarities, the attitude, and I get a lot of that. So, I just want to let people know I'm not ever in my life, if there's ever been somebody who's not trying to knock anyone off, it's me. If you don't believe me, you don't believe me, but a lot of things I do, I just go do what I feel like doing, where my energy leads me. Maybe there are things that I don't even know subconsciously that are happening, but by no means am I ever trying to rip anyone off or do a certain type of style that someone else is doing. And when I kind of did that, for instance, when I was doing the Joe Rogan, kind of like thinking, oh man, this would kind of work for me. I know a lot of crazy, funny people sitting around and doing this. And I'm not saying I won't do that in the future. It just didn't work for me. And that's kind of a perfect example of me just creating whatever I want to create. And what I like about even my old podcast, because I'm getting ready to put a whole list together, I organize them for my marketing team because we're going to be using a lot of them. I used to even do these in the car while driving all over the country. I would do them in hotels, restaurants. I've done podcasts in Italian restaurants. The problem with doing that is the audio wasn't good, but I just loved just doing whatever I felt like doing whenever I wanted to do it. And that's how it is now for me. A lot of times I do these podcasts on the fly, like right now I got to go take off, be somewhere in about 20 minutes, but something came to my head. I had some comments, questions online. I said, let me just go shoot out a quick podcast and tell people really why I do what I do regarding this podcast, why I love doing it. And I love the people that listen to it as well. I've never had more feedback. I guess my YouTube is much bigger than my podcast, but I should say personally when I see people, for some reason we talk about the podcast more than anything else. So anyways, I'm going to wrap it up there. Again, you got any questions, comments, hit me up, and I wish everyone the best.